Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Brackett. I'm coming to you live from Landlife Podcast set right here. It's episode 22. This is SwitchGrass and stuff. SwitchGrass and stuff. Spring, March 28th. I mean, this is the time that you are doing all the planning. I will be finishing up maps the rest of the day. It's one of my favorite things to do, to sit down and do maps and go back over the places that I've been over the past 2 months. If you don't know what I do, I'm a consultant. I run this planet. And I run the United States in my vehicle, going from farm to farm, trying to make a whitetail wonderland, trying to put all the odds in someone's favor. My normal client is somebody that's had a farm, and they've probably had it for about, I would say, average of 5 to 7 years. When they first got the property, whether it be in Illinois or somewhere in the Midwest or Wisconsin or down in Tennessee or Kentucky or Ohio, let's say the Midwest. A lot of times they'll get the property, it'll have some big deer on it, and they'll dominate those big deer and kill 3, 4, 5 really big deer over a course of a year and a half or 2 years or whatever that is, right? Like 2 seasons. And then all of a sudden it starts kind of tailing down. They start getting encounters with 3-year-olds and sometimes 4-year-olds, and they're after 5, 6, 7s, and they think the property is going to continue to get better and it's always going to have big deer. And it has big deer, but they normally turn into ghosts because now those deer have felt your consistency of pressure over and over and over and over. And then they've learned to beat you, and you have to figure out how you can flip the switch on them. And that is what I'm a professional at. I've been doing it for years on television, Fear No Evil, Arrow Affliction, Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel. I've been all across this country. I've chased my dreams. I've killed some of the biggest deer that I've ever dreamed to chase. And most of them, if I'm after one, they don't get away. That leads me to a professional situation where people call me in to say, be a Ghostbuster, right? Like, you're going to call Ghostbusters. Nope. You're going to call Game Changers. And then you're going to call me, and we're going to get on the phone. I'm going to look at your map, and then we're going to get into the game, and we're going to figure out how to flip the switch on those deer. Whether that is thermals, which is thermals are like borders getting in and out of your property and having these tall native grasses. If you haven't played with native grasses, you're going to want to make sure you tune in and listen to this one about switchgrass and what it's for and why you do it and how I utilize it and how to go about utilizing it, the different kinds of switchgrass. What is the malarkey that's out there in the world? And you know that I tell you the truth, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to tell you the truth. Why? Because I just can't not tell you the truth. It is a passion of mine. It is something that I just love more than anything. Native grass, whitetails, helping people. And so here we are. We are here chilling on this Thursday, spring break for a lot of kids, a lot of parents, and you guys are kind of traveling and at the same time itching to start planting things for the next season. Bryce Liberty here is behind the camera. Say hi, Bryce. Bryce is helping me take this to the next level. We have some partners like White Gold, as you can see over my shoulder here. I'm going to tell you about some of our new blends. White Gold, that is the place to get it. White Gold is a company out of Michigan. There's some brothers that bought a mill house, kind of, a local feed mill and stuff. And we just became friends when I wanted to start making some really good blends of seed that I could have shipped straight to customers and friends. So what that really came about is I got sick of buying stuff over the counter at the big box stores because I knew that they just printed labels and I couldn't ever guarantee the freshness. So when it came to White Gold, the freshness of the seed was number one for me, and always has. No matter what seed I've used, it's always been about getting the bang for the buck. I wish I had one of those and be like, like that was like a little drum roll. Do I have a drum? There you go. That's for a joke. Bang for the buck, right? And so Kelly Seed is local here, and I talk to Nick all the time, and Nick's like, well, why don't you promote me? And I said, well, here's the deal, man. If somebody's living in Tennessee, like my friends down there, or somebody's living in Indiana or Ohio or Illinois, I can't tell them where they can guarantee that they can drive and get good seed. You can't go to a Bass Pro or somewhere and get that. You can't go and get that type of freshness. So I wanted to be able to send somebody to an online place that they could have shipped to their door. And that's what white gold is about. So, we got some clovers and some, some alfalfa blends that are right now need to go in because it's cold and you can still frost seed. But, that got me off track a little bit. But at the end of the day, that list is going to drive me nuts trying to keep it on and off. And so I'm a little distracted, but what we want to talk to you about is SwitchGrass. And we were trying to write a list here of all the questions yesterday that everybody wanted to know about SwitchGrass. And we actually offer a new SwitchGrass, and it's called Fort Knox, and you can get it at White Gold. And before we kind of dive into that, Bryce is coming on board to help me film one of these a day, maybe a couple a week, doing this podcast. If you are just tuned in or just have seen it, this is Landlife. Landlife is where we dive into the land management, everything having to do with land. Whitetails, big whitetails. You got Don Higgins out there chasing giants. You got some, Jeff Sturgis is up north doing what he does and talking about his pockets and a lot of TSI and hinge cutting. And then I probably fall more in just the straight up killer with a green thumb and a strategist. There isn't many situations that don't call for patience and being able to flip your farm around to put the predominant wins in your favor. Like there's things I can't control. The things I can't control when it comes to whitetails is which way the wind's going to blow, what the humidity is out there. I don't think people probably give humidity enough credit for how much it affects critters and whitetails, how they move. You got to think about how that humidity is holding the air. Is the air heavy? Does the air flow down the ridge or the mountain down to the whitetails? Or is it a really high system or a really dry air and you're able to get away with more? You're not going to find this guy promoting sodium benzenol or these things that are like these scent killers. Or you're not going to hear me talk about you have to be scent proof when going in to kill one of these whitetails. You have to be strategically superior in your thought process of how to every day, over and over, pay attention to all of the things that we can't control. The wind, the temperature, the humidity in the air. You could go as far as dew point. You could go as far as jet stream. You can go as far as how to understand how the wind sucks into a system before the system gets here. That depth of strategy. So a guy will call and he'll say, hey, Chris, I've had a farm. I got a 150-acre farm. I got a 400-acre farm. I've never experimented with the native grasses. I've never experimented with switchgrass. I've never done big blue or little blue. And I want to get into making some soft edges because I've watched your Landlife, Chris Brackett's Landlife on Instagram. I've seen the soft edges. I've seen the whitetails that you continually outsmart and harvest and grow. I mean, because the main part is growing these big whitetails. I don't even think chasing them is or hunting them or killing them is the hard part. I really believe that getting the deer to live on your property and grow on your property, and even if outsmarting him 3 or 4 days a year and keeping him on your property while you outsmart him is, to me, a game changer in the fact that if he's on your property for 3 or 4 days, he's not getting killed by the neighbor. I just had this conversation yesterday. A gentleman called. I got a hold of Tim Sisk, which is my real world dealer. He does 360 blinds. And if I can't get something that White Gold sells, I buy it through Tim. And so Tim has a guy call me. The guy buys some miscanthus and switchgrass and calls us to plant it in central Illinois. We've already got a bunch of projects going on in Fulton County. So depending on how high demand that we're in, depends on what price or what we're going to do to put them in. But we've got like an 8 or 9 acre switchgrass planting, and which really got us on the fact of let's talk about switchgrass today. So yesterday we had this conversation. The guy is buying miscanthus, buying switchgrass, needs us to apply it and put it in, which is and can be because I've been there, a daunting task of trying to understand how to get a native grass established, especially when you're not just looking at it as a crop, because a lot of this is you're taking ag acres out, and ag acres, corn, beans, you're getting cash rent, you're farming them yourselves. When is the point where you take those out and give up the 3, 4, 5,000 acre, 5 per year for the acres in ag that are food plots, and then put them back into cover where a big deer can live an extra year? How to get that extra year on these deer to get them to 5 years old, 6 years old? That's the question. That's the question. I think that is probably the number one question that all of us consultants get. If somebody was to say, hey, how much are you to come out and do a place? We are roughly 5. That is minuscule amount compared to what I get as a broker in Illinois to help you buy a farm. And so someone would say, well, how do you justify making that much money or charging that amount? All right. So if I'm a broker in Illinois and I'm selling land and I represent you, right? And let's say you could have a percentage of what you pay a realtor, whether you sell your farm or whether you are using a realtor. And in this case, I'm not a realtor. I'm a real estate agent as a broker in Illinois. We're called brokers in Illinois, super duper broker in Illinois. I work for Herman Brothers Realty. And as a broker, you will sell a piece of property normally and have a 5, 6, 7% commission. Let's just say 6% commission on a property that's like, let's say, $1 million. And on $1 million, you are going to, as the seller, going to pay 6% of that to someone to fly drones, advertise, put it on their podcast, put it onto their social media, put it into the world. Their job is to advertise that sucker, get you the highest price. Sometimes you're calling for highest and best. And so when you're calling for that, there can be another agent out there that sees it, and he's got a client like Bryce that's looking to buy a piece of property, and he can bring a buyer and say, hey, Chris, we're really interested in your property. I'm representing that person. What is your split on commission? It's a red flag if the first question he normally asks me is, how much is my split? Because I know that if I don't say the right number, he probably is not going to be as advantageous to promoting the buy of a property. And so when you work with us, you're really going to find a situation where the priority lies in how knowledgeable is your agent about the land. If that agent's relying on me, no, and let me back this up. Normally, I don't know of a time that we didn't just split in half with whatever that real estate agent or realtor, whoever we work with, we work both. We split that with them. So we work very good with the land guys and the Brad Belzers of the world and the John O'Reillys and so all these guys that are either realtors or their agents, we work with them and we just split because we have a lot more to offer than just selling a farm. Even if a land guy sells a farm, Don Wagner, we bought one with him for a client, and then that guy needs a professional consultant to come in and look at it. Well, I say this, I want your business. I want to sell you a farm, or I want to bring a buyer to go buy a farm. If you're on my team, me as an agent, me as a broker, and I'm your real estate agent, your broker, then you are going to get a full consult. As we look at farms, you may get 5 farms. We may look at 5 farms, and I break these farms down and I look at them and I design them on the map and I get them all set up and I tell you how I would hunt them. I would tell you where I would get miscanthus and switchgrass and all that stuff. You're getting a $5,000 value every time I look at a farm for you, because you and I are a team as a broker for you as a buying team. So let's say you didn't use me. Let's say 5 years ago, you used, I don't know, Don Wagner or Cabot Bend or somebody. You bought a farm. It happens a lot. I just did this conversation. Don sold the guy the farm, but Don Wagner. And so now he's had this plan in place and he needs me to plant it. Well, I look at it and immediately there's a little tweak that needs to be made. Well, I'm not going to say, well, I'm not going to map that up and tweak it a little bit for you. I'm going to go ahead and plant it. and I'm also going to bid the job to plant the job. And so we'll plant 8 to 9 acres. We'll agree on a price, and we'll put it in perfect. So if somebody was just putting in miscanthus or just putting in switchgrass, they may not be as good as us at putting it in or application of the other stuff to make it boom and jump. But that is where you have carpenters that are better, home builders that are better, service managers at cars and truck places, So when you're breaking all this down, you're getting what you pay for. We're not the cheapest to plant the miscanthus. We're not the cheapest to plant the switchgrass. We're not even the cheapest on me coming to do a consult on your farm. But I think we're very, very fair. And you come to our line, the gift you're going to get, the blessings that you're going to get by going with us, that you're going to get because we love what we do, are going to far outweigh your indecisiveness of, are they worth it? So that's what I have to say. And we have lots of people that we can give you numbers that we help. And the goal is to educate. And that's what Landlife is about. So as we go on this little adventure here, and we talk a little bit about switchgrass and the consulting. If you're interested in consulting, I can still get there through turkey season. I'm still going to Wisconsin, I believe the 12th to the 13th. I'd like to pick up a couple more that week of April 9th through about the 12th. I'd love to go to Wisconsin, rock out some more consults up there. And then I'm finishing some up that I'm still doing the mapping. So I go there, we put boots on the ground, normally go a night early, hang out all day long, plan it on my phone with maps, get as much intel from the landowner as I can. And then I start mapping everything out. I start coming up with, what's his budget? What's he wanting to do? Is he wanting to kill 3 or 4 big deer? Is he wanting to kill 1 big deer? Is he wanting to grow big deer? Turkeys and blinds? Is he a blind hunter, a bow hunter? And all that stuff for me, it gets very in depth. And that's why I'm able to go the extra mile for that person. And it's not if you follow the plans, it's not if you kill them. It's not if you grow them. It's when you kill them and how big they're going to get. I mean, there is just proof in the pudding. And so this gentleman the other day on the switchgrass side, really just the questions start popping up. And I can go back probably 5 years ago, COVID-esque time frame when we had a lot more time. You couldn't go everywhere. And I really wanted to dive in and find out what all the love was about these native grasses. My whole life, I had grown up hunting over CRP field. Pretty much crop restoration programs where they would add big blue and little blue and Indian grass. And, 10, 15 years ago, these things were huge fields of these programs, and they used a lot taller grasses than they do now. A lot of the grasses now are more of a pollinator program for the bees, but there's not as much tall cover. I think now having some of that you're actually getting paid for, and then having some switchgrass areas that are monoculture, that are big fields or edges that are 100% switchgrass with nothing in there to eat. I think that is where it comes down to preference. And I don't really know, but I think I just want to touch right now on what is switchgrass. I know that I love the native grass hunting, and if you've never hunted the native grass hunting, and what that means is I try to retract a lot because I can feel myself going in a direction that I want to make sure that everybody knows from a basis of a 101 standpoint. You have a piece of timber and you have fields. That is your normal farm or piece of dirt in Illinois or the Midwest. And somewhere in there, you are missing normally an area of grasses. And let's say you have beans, corn, farmer takes the beans and corn out. You've got a timber, whether it's a young timber that's just been logged or it's first generating, or it's an old timber that doesn't have a lot of, growth and browse in it. You normally look at a farm, let's take 100 acres, and you look at that farm, you look at that piece of dirt and you say, where are my grasses? Where are my cool season grasses, which is like the stuff you have in your yard? Or you look at it and say, where is this big, tall grass that rabbits can hide and that deer could hide, and that can really hide an entire deer body, whether he's laying in it or whether she's laying in it, whether the fawns are in this grass? Where is that on my farm? And if your answer is, I don't have any, this podcast right now, this Land Life episode 22 is for you. It's about switchgrass. Switchgrass and other stuff. Like it is something that if you don't have it, you're gonna want it. So listen up. Bryce, what do we have? What am I missing that we planned on talking about today when it comes to switchgrass? Because I'll just dive right into it.
Yeah, no, I think you covered quite a bit of it already, at least.
And now I'm going to explain it.
Yeah, at least the main parts, and then you just break it down and go into depth on each one.
Well, the first thing I think on our list is I'm going to talk about why for me was switchgrass a thing that I had to have in my life. So I personally, my whole hunting life for years and years and years was hunting a CRP field, the Crop Restoration Program fields of Big Blue and Little Blue and Indian. I saw what happened in the magical time during the rut and late October when I saw bucks materialize out of this standing grass that was 5-6 foot tall. And at the time I didn't know that it was Big Blue and Little Blue, and I knew it was for pheasants, and I knew it was, for things like that. And but I saw so many creatures in it. I saw turkeys come in and out of it. I saw raccoons and rabbits come in and out of it, and I hunted pheasants in it. And I always was drawn to a CRP's tall standing grass, native grass field. And I didn't know the difference between switchgrass and that. And so over the years, I always kept in my head that when I looked for a farm to get permission on to hunt, I would always look for these big set-aside farms. Even if there were weeds, they had these tall grasses. And the stuff that had cedars and tall grasses always had the largest whitetails in Illinois that I could ever find. And every time I would go to Iowa, to kind of middle Iowa, southern middle, they would have rolling fields of incredible native grasses, pheasants everywhere. And you could have these giant farms, and they would hold huge whitetails on these ditches that were surrounded on both sides by what, come to find out, more like Indian, Big Blue, and switch combination. And that was the DNR in Iowa doing such a good job. So when I looked around Illinois, the harder I looked, the more I couldn't find farms that had these programs. And then when me and my wife but wasn't my wife at the time, but we had a farm that we had a program that was called a CP33 program. And this was a program that had the DNR or FSA office would have a program that you could get paid sometimes more than what the farmer would pay to cash rent your ground. And this was 40 yards. This program happened to be 40 yards around all of our ag fields. And you had ag in the middle, and then this kind of this runoff of the field, kind of where it sloped over. If they qualified, they would pay us like $260, $275 an acre for the CRP program that had switchgrass in it. And I can't tell you that that's like an extreme, it's kind of like an extreme feathered edge or soft edge that I like to promote now. As a soft edge or feathered edge. And it was an extreme version of that. So imagine 40 yards around your entire field being 7 foot tall and you can't see in it. That would make your timber be a very chill place for a whitetail to live on the edge of that. And they got to stand up earlier and they got to move earlier. So this is my second time in 20 years that I got to experience what soft edges or native grasses on the outside did for big deer and wildlife. And it was some of the most incredible. I could hold, on 60 acres, I could hold late in the season 12 bucks over 150 inches, big mature whitetails. And I would find all the sheds in and around these grasses. And that was my second time. And so that kind of got me on this path of, I want to master switchgrass. And then, there's a kind of a break in time there till about 5 years ago or so. So you're looking at, 2000, we started working on farms kind of full time. And it was time that switchgrass became more available and available. You had Real World coming out with a whitetail type switchgrass that was very tall and hardy, that Don Higgins and what's the guy, I just talked to him. What's the guy that started Real World with, he does Elite Consulting now. He does stuff with Lee and Tiffany now. What's his name? You can't help me? Oh, Kevin Boyer. He's friends with Kevin Thier. And Kevin Boyer, he calls himself the Dirt Wizard, or I don't know. I think Lakoski calls him the Dirt Wizard. But I do know from Kevin Thier that he is like the dirt master. He would know all the stuff that would make your soil better with like microorganisms and, all this. Look, man, I wish he was my neighbor. I wish he'd come up here and work on this dirt. This is nasty timber dirt up here that we're planting into with clay and all that. So you got Kevin Boyer and you got Don Higgins, and they're coming out with these switchgrass blends and they're testing them. And this was probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, which piqued my interest. And it wasn't so much like Don killing 200-inch deer. Nothing about that is surprising to me that he's killing really big deer. He set out on a goal 20 years ago to go, I want to kill 200-inch deer. That's not me. I want to kill as many as legally, as many as legally possible that are mature that I'm going after, whether that's in different states or whether that's my 2 in Illinois. Mine isn't to grow a 2. I don't think in this day and age to grow a 200-inch deer, and people could argue with me about this. Me personally, I have never hunted a 200-inch deer. I've hunted a 185-inch deer and I killed him. 100-inch deer, I killed him. I've hunted 6 deer and I killed them. To me, it's about hunting an animal and killing them. Like Wolverine was 9.5 years old, if not older. Cowboy is 9.5 years old. This last year, we outsmarted him. I mean, I've killed the oldest deer that I've ever gone after and outsmarted them. And we've outsmarted them as a team. And I've been fortunate enough, to kill the ones I'm after and then even help put you on a giant. You killed a 180-inch deer, like to go after these deer in these areas and grow them and have the leases and have the property. It really started a thing to where when these guys started growing the switchgrass and started growing this other stuff, it really blew my mind and intrigued me, I think, as a lot of people out there. But I think what a lot of the guys that are in my position wouldn't do is they wouldn't give the credit to the Kevin Boyers and the Don Higginses and go, listen, these guys are over here trying to grow 200-inch deer and falling in love with switchgrass and taking ditches in southeastern Illinois and going, hey, how can we grow this stuff really tall and to give these deer security in these ditches and grow these big giant deer? And Don likes to use like a pine fence rows and then miscanthus. Kevin Boyer was the first time I'd ever heard of miscanthus, but it was from like Maple River up north, and it wasn't the same as the real world. So they were on this journey. While they were on this journey, I was on this journey of finding myself in a land management position and learning how to grow this stuff. So as they're perfecting the genealogy of a lot of the stuff, my butt was trying to figure out how I can take Kirk's farm, for example. He was a landowner just before we were friends, and I was a landowner, but these guys I knew that they wanted results. I hung around a lot of, successful agro male dominant driver. I work hard. I want it done now. I want it the biggest, best. I don't mind paying for it. So my job was to go, okay, how can I grow? So I met Ray Reeves from Genesis Wildlife Group. And then I would call Higgins on my cell phone. I'd call Boyer, I'd call Food Plot Kevin Thier, and I would just do as much research as I could. My goal was to get switchgrass 4 or 5 foot tall the first year. What was the best way to plant it? And then as me and my wife and I bought and kept making her family farm bigger, I knew that I wanted to turn all of my ag into cover and then flip it back into food. So when we bought the 35, that add to the 60, I looked at the whole thing and said, man, my dream would be to have this baby 80% of the ag fields into switchgrass, and it was game on. I then was in a position where I think a lot of people are, and they kind of freak out at a daunting task. The guy's texting right now on how much it's going to cost to plant the switchgrass. So for me, I had 16, 17 acres of tillable ground. Okay, you guys, all right, we're going to reset. Ready? I had 100 acres. This is 5 years ago. 100 acres. I had 16 or 17. Don't hold me to these numbers. They're ish. I'm going to do 15 to 17 ish in ag in little fields. My timber was probably 70-30 timber to ag fields. Ag fields being plantable, maybe not be able to get the big tractors in, but something plantable, whether it be in a clover plot or food plot, an alfalfa field, corn, beans, something now plantable that I could get a sprayer in and that I could work the ground and I could actual plant. Okay, so 17 acres of that. I now there was 26 acres of tillable. I flipped 17 of that into thermal. That's what it was. So I had 26 acres. That makes more sense. So 70-30, about 70% timber and just kind of rough ground and creek. 27, 26 acres of tillable ground. And my goal at the very beginning, 5 years ago, was to take all of my ag fields and turn them into food plots and turn them into thermal bedding cover using switchgrass, miscanthus, conifer trees, and things like that. So break that down. 100 acres, percent of that is timber, creek bottoms, hills, fence rows, and just rough ground that you would call rec ground timber. Another 30% of it, 26 acres, is stuff that I could plant grass in, food in, or trees in. And I decided to take 17 acres and put that into some type of thermal cover, which led me down the road of buying real world switchgrass at the time from Tim Sisk. I came up with this crazy plan. Oh, I also bought some from Ray Reeves, and it was more of a smaller switchgrass. And then I did an experiment one time in a field with just straight up already stratified cave-in rock that I got from Kelly Seed. So I had planted 3 different variances of them. The fastest to germinate and the tallest out of those was the real world. But I realized that just having the real world or just having the tallest on the market was not the best. And we'll get to that later. But I took the 3 different ones. I planned out all these different fields, and I decided, because remember, I couldn't hunt that year, I decided that I was going to go into these fields. I carved out my food on the downwind side, how the deer were going to move. They were going to be alfalfa, soybeans. I was going to leave 4 acres of soybeans, and I was going to leave the rest in corn. And then I had a couple clover plots. I decided that field number 1 out front was going to be cave-in rock, regular switchgrass I think I planted that stuff at 8 pounds or 9 pounds to the acre. Because when I first started this, I thought, no way is it going to take. I'll just put more down, and that was a mistake. That's too much. That's 8 or 9 pounds the acre. So that was at the front field. So I remember frost seeding something. I remember frost seeding it in the front field that was a bean field. And as I frost seeded it, I didn't wait long enough. And about June, I'll tell you about the other fields the same, but this is the front field. In June, I had this beautiful tilled field, and it had been frost seeded with switchgrass, and I got impatient like you all will, just like me. And I spent I probably spent $300 or $400, and I bought all the seed, and I threw it all down, and I let it stratify, and it was a real wet year, and I got freaked out because by the end of May, it wasn't growing yet. And I remember getting freaked out, and I remember not using the right pre-emerge. So I just decided to scrap the entire project. And I decided to get on my 4-wheeler with a 25-gallon sprayer. And I put in glyphosate, regular mixture, glyphosate, and then which is a broadleaf killer. Okay. So the 2 of them combined together is napalm, is what we call it. So I put them in there. This does about 1.5 acres per tank or whatever. And then I went ahead and I put in, I forget what the ratio at the beginning was, whatever's on the label. That's the technical answer. But I think I put in like 2 quarts to the acre of simazine, and I put it all down on this field, and I burned everything that was green. It wasn't very tall because I had already worked it. It grew up. In this particular field, I decided to do the extra work because I wanted to see what was going to happen. And I went in and I tilled the entire field with my tractor, 50 horse tractor with a 5-foot tiller. And I tilled the entire field, and it was perfect powdered dust, something out of a movie, like just a beautiful field. And then I drove around on my 4-wheeler with the spreader on the front, a Femco spreader on the front. And I remember that I didn't even open the little slab or the little tab because I wanted the seed to kind of come out the little, just a little opening, a little gap. And I drove over this entire field, and I spent the 2 days doing all of this. And then I had this beautiful field. I had these little seeds that had fell out and spread all over the place. I went back and forth, and I could see my tires in that dust. And then I remember my wife getting on the other 4-wheeler, and I got a Packer Max that year. And it is Packer Max. If you don't know what it is, it's a cultipacker, which compresses the soil and gives a really good contact to the soil. It cultipacks it. So the Packer Max, she put it on a 4-wheeler. She drove the entire 3.5 or 4 acres and cultipacked the whole thing. And I got pictures, you guys, on Instagram. You guys should see them. You can see the lines from the cultipacker, the Packer Max. You can see the 4-wheelers. You can see how and it went from that to by August and September that year. So in 3 months, that regular cave and rock from Kelly seed germinated and exploded late in the summer. And the simazine mixed at 2 quarts to the acre, kept it off, kept all the other stuff from growing as a pre-emerge. And man, I'm telling you right now that stuff grew 3-4 feet by September. So I didn't mow it. I didn't do anything. I didn't, once I put that down there, I didn't spray anything on it. That next spring, it was already growing out of each little plant. I knew it was already too thick. And then I waited till probably about May, and I went throughout the whole thing. So this is year 2. I went through the whole thing, and I was like, let me try out this quinclorac. I had heard about this quinclorac. Now, I have many other fields to tell you stories on, but I'm telling you, the first field that I really did was done like you would do a regular food plot. Kill it with some pre-emerge, till it up, and then plant the seed, and then pack it, and then walk away. And it turned out incredible. The problem is it turned out too good. Every seed germinated. And then I'm like, I want a monoculture. And a monoculture is a singular culture that has one plant in it with no other things. So I immediately started to go ahead and go, I want everything out of this switchgrass patch. I want it to be all switchgrass. This is my goal. And so I did that. In May. I put 2. Now remember, 2,4-D is not going to hurt my grass, right? So I put 2, and I put quinclorac. I think I put like one of those little bottles is like 50 something ounces. I did that per acre. And then I put, because it's the next year, I can put simazine on again. I'm like, I'm not going to let any other seed germinate in here. And I put more simazine in. This is the next year. And I sprayed the whole farm in May. The second year switch was already growing. And that September, I still, to this day, if you look at my Instagram, you'll see last week I burned it. That was 4 or 5 years ago. And I did not have one foxtail weed, not one weed in an entire patch of 4 acres of cave and rock switchgrass. It was 6.5 foot over my head, and the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. But the only thing that lived in it was raccoons, rabbits. But because it was my furthest field away from the main part of my timber, it was next to the road and next to my Airbnb house. It was merely a trump wall. It was a protective barrier of 4 acres, 250 yards long by, I don't know, what is that? Probably 60, 70 yards wide, all the way down through there. You can't see into my timber from the road. So what is that actually doing? That particular stand of switchgrass, used to my advantage, I don't want deer bedding there next to the road anyways, added as a super barrier protector, monoculture, with no other weeds or other grasses in it. It works to the way that I want it to. but that was by happenstance because everything else I planted after that planting, I don't want that thick. So I want you to use that example that I just told you, which was just takes extra time, and you just work it, you kill it, and you work the ground. And look what happened here. I sprayed it in early spring and I killed everything. Well, no. So I frost seeded. I just threw the stuff down, and I didn't do any prep work. I didn't do anything for competition. I just threw it down, and it wasn't a big deal. It didn't grow. It didn't do what I wanted. I wasted 300, 400. I then waited till end of May and June, right? And you're like, you're planting this stuff in the middle of Illinois in the end of May or June? Well, you got to think about it because it's a warm season grass. This is when you want to write down in your little book if you're listening. Your warm season grass is not going to germinate until that ground is 60 to 70 degrees. And you could argue with me and say, well, some species, they germinate when it's high 50s. I don't care, Junior. Listen, rule of thumb is 60 something degrees, 65 degrees. If that temperature of that ground is 65 degrees and your farmers are their corn is up out of the ground and screaming for the sky because it's hot out, that's the time to plant switchgrass. Because here's why. The cool season grasses, your clovers, they're not a grass, but your clovers, they're cool season, 50-degree nights, 45, 50-degree soil. They're going to grow like crazy. Your grasses in your yard are going to grow like crazy those cool nights with that water and that dew. Let those guys grow in the season. If you're thinking about switch right now, let these guys grow right now. And as soon as they think it's awesome in that perfect day, that first perfect day that it's awesome to go fishing or it's awesome to go golfing and your yard needs mowed, that's the day to go zap and kill the field that you want to plant switchgrass in, because these cool season grasses that are coming up out of the ground, they're just screaming for the sky. And remember, your warm season grasses, once established, will awaken at 50 something degrees. But if you're looking at planting, you want this green stuff to get up out of the ground, and then you zap it in April. Boom, kill it all. Roundup, glyphosate, 2,4-D, kill it. If you got extra time, kill it again. The main thing is taking care of the competition. So then I had some other fields that I wanted to experiment in. And you heard all the extreme I went to with field number 1 of just preparing the soil and making it perfect and making it sterile because I had already killed everything in it. And I didn't awaken any seeds because it had been an ag field for a while and it didn't have a lot of seeds in it. And then I went in and I put the simazine, which you need to know that the simazine, I believe simazine dual, I believe atrazine. The only two I've used is simazine and atrazine and quinclorac, 2,4-D and glyphosate. Those are the only ones I'm talking about in this podcast or what I've used. I go in and make sure that you have to have the burn down from the chemical killer. So the gly and the 2,4-D, it touches the skin of the plant. The plant needs time to suck it into its system, take it down to the roots, and kill the plant even though it doesn't look dead. So you only really need to wait. Rule of thumb for me, I know there's other people, just wait 24 hours. If you spray that sucker one day, the next day, if you mix it right and it sucks it in with no wetness and it's actively growing, the next day you can mow it, kill it, till it doesn't matter, it's dead. So let's go to another field. Another field that I have strategically, I went in with real world switchgrass. Now, mind you, I have this Fort Knox. Those of you who aren't listening, I've got white gold, the Landlife series. I have a mix right here in this bag. This bag is 6 pounds. This will cover 1 acre. You'll spill a little bit, whatever. I want to go, me personally, on a lot of my fields. Well, how much should I plant per acre? Well, what are you trying to do with it? Are you trying to make a front field, a big block field to make your timber secure? Then you're going to want to be 6 pounds, 7 pounds per acre, one of these bags. This has got some cave-in rock. This is Fort Knox. So this is white gold. You can order it online. A lot of places don't sell it by the acre. This bag does 1 acre of of planting of a switchgrass. So this has got some cave-in rock, some big rock, some Tecumseh. This has got all the hot name blends out. This is the blend, right? So you got Real World, or you probably got mine. This has got all the other new buzz stuff in it. RC, cave-in rock, and Tecumseh. These are all the ones you want. We just went ahead and put them in a blend. Why do we sell them? Why is ours better than everybody else's? Nope. It's good seed. Quality seed. It's not sitting on a shelf somewhere. This is coming straight to your door. You might pay a little bit extra for it, but you're getting the guarantee that it is fresh and at your door. So Fort Knox, white gold Fort Knox. Check it out. Anyways, this 6-pound bag, it does 1 acre. So if you need to do 3 acres, you buy 3 of those. So I went with Real World about 4 or 5 years ago, bought it from Tim Sisk, took the Real World and decided, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I don't right now. Now I actually own one, and we have a couple here on the farm, and I have some other people that can plant. I didn't have, and I was convinced I needed a no-till drill. I needed a no-till drill to plant this next field in my bottoms of switchgrass. Here's what I did. I'm going to talk not about the bottoms, the second field. So the second field, I carved out 4 acres of corn, 3 acres of beans, miscanthus along the outside, ran a 5-foot, 6-foot strip of switchgrass down. This was my whole plan. I had consulted for myself and created like, this is the best plan. And I took 7 acres out of ag, and I decided, here's what I'm going to do. I hired a guy for X amount of number of dollars per acre or by the visit. And I went in and I said, okay, it was May. I waited till April or May, and I sprayed it with 2 glyphosate and simazine, at least 2 quarts to the acre. I put all those in a mix, and if I knew me, I sprayed it hot. That's all I can tell you. I sprayed it hot. It was growing. It was probably a foot tall. The turkeys were in it. I remember it was after turkey season, so that was April and then May. So sometime in May, I sprayed the whole thing and killed everything growing. This was into an old bean field. I sprayed everything growing, and I burned it down, and everything died. And then I had the pre-emerge in there that was the simazine. Okay, atrazine is another one that your farmers can get. It's just it's a prosumer model instead of a consumer chemical. They're cousins. They have a few different attributes or whatever, but they're pretty much the same thing. You can order them online, the simazine. So you're going to pour all those together. You're going to spray all the weeds, and you're going to kill everything. Now, even the same day, not affecting that seed whatsoever. And these seeds are tiny, you guys. These seeds are tiny. You guys listening up there, these seeds are like a little foxtail seed, even smaller. And they're a real hard little seed, okay? These seeds then were put into a no-till drill. Like, I really hope one day we can work with PH Outdoors. They've got the Genesis 5 drill. I'd really love one of them, but right now I have a Great Plains drill, and they use a Great Plains drill. So they put them in there. You calibrate it. Don't let the calibration scare you. It's just, you can literally look down and see the seeds coming out. We use the small seed box. We put that in there. We set the setting on, like, if you want to get a good starting point, you got like a Great Plains drill. There is some other seeds in the book, and it doesn't say switchgrass. I think they do that on purpose, but there are some other seeds in there, like a canary reed, which is an invasive plant. But for some reason, canary reed, they plant in some areas, maybe down south. And if you look on the Great Plains book of like what your settings are, rates per acre, we put that in at 5 to 6 pounds to the acre. I think 5 or 6 pounds the acre. We set it on the setting for canary reed, did the calibrations, found out it was 6 pounds per acre, and we drove back and forth and drilled in that seed straight into the melting. Remember, I had just sprayed the weeds with Gly and simazine and 2,4-D all at once, killed it all, and I drilled right there, bang, into that. So as that little seed gets just in those lines, all of a sudden, everybody else starts dying, and they cover up that seed. and they make it perfect, and now they're in lines, and I'll bet you 50 to 60% will germinate and start growing by the end of June. Don't get in a hurry. This is the end of May when I did it. And by the end of June, I started to see these little, I could tell because they were in lines. And this is a very, 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 very slow growing germinating seed. It throws roots down first. You're going to go look and go, ooh, is this switchgrass? Nope. I'm going to tell you, no, it's yellow foxtail because it looks a lot like it. Don't look at it ever again. Okay. So now what I did with this planting is that I just left it alone and I waited till July. Now in July, I risked it all and I bought some and I bought some quinclorac, and I might have just even thrown some more simazine in there. But I put it in my tank and I rode over all of my stuff that was coming up because I didn't know if it was coming up. And I was just a foolish young man experimenting. And I went over all of it. And the quinclorac, because the switchgrass was all about 6, 7, 8 inches tall, that was there, but it was mixed in with all these other weeds and all these other foxtail. So in that moment, the two didn't hurt the little guy because they were big enough by that point, because I think 2,4-D can hurt switchgrass if it's too little, so don't do that. But I went over that whole thing with quinclorac, spent a bunch of money in quinclorac. It's called XLR8 if you can't find it, XLR8. I put that in there and I put the simazine in there and I sprayed the whole thing and I walked away. Man, I showed up that September. And when I tell you that stuff was chest high, 4 foot tall, and was too thick. Why was it too thick, Chris? Because I had sprayed half the field. Oh, that's why I got to back up. It was too thick on half the field. And the reason why it was too thick on half the field was I took out all of the competition, not some of the competition. I took out all of the competition, and the switchgrass, all the seed germinated. And now I'm looking at 6, 7 pounds. I might have been more than that, but I know that I took out everything else and it grew like crazy and got tall. On the other half of this field, this is what I want to tell you. The 7-acre field, the stuff to the right, I planted it in switchgrass. I sprayed it 2,4-D, Roundup, glyphosate, and the simazine, and I planted it, and I sprayed it with quinclorac, and I made it to where it was a monoculture. And I did all of this like May, and then I did it again in the end of July, and I killed all the other weeds with the quinclorac. The 2,4-D took care of the broadleaves, and the simazine kept everything from growing again. What did I do right? I don't know. But I've never seen switchgrass so tall and so beautiful in my entire life. The problem was on that side of the field, there was nothing else for the deer to eat or to bed in like these little pockets. And it was very much a monoculture. It's still like that today. I am in the process of going back right now and taking out and thinning it out a little bit. But now realize that this is the second field in a big monoculture field from the road through the timber, then a half monoculture field again. And then the other half of this field, I planted at the same time at the same rate of 6 pounds per acre. I would probably lean more on the 4 pounds per acre and shoot for the 4 pounds per acre now that I know years later. And the second part of the field on to the left, remember this was 4 or 5 years ago. The second side of this field, closest to the west, I did not spray with the quinclorac. I wanted to split the field. I wanted to know on which side would look better and what the deer would like. And in the one to the left, the 3.5 acres to the left, I also had extra miscanthus that year. And I went ahead and in May, when I planted and no-tilled into that, I had my wife sit on the back, and maybe Bryce was even there, and we threw in about 10,000 rhizomes between that field and another field. We just threw them into the field, and when I say threw them in, we started on a line, and we would throw 1, 2, 3, 4, and then skip 10 feet and then throw some more. And I went across the whole field and I just put these random spots of 5-foot little miscanthus runs all over this field, 10 foot apart, 5 foot apart, whatever. And so when you look at the field now, not being chemically treated with the quinclorac and the 2,4-D and the simazine later in the year, I have 15-foot tall miscanthus all scattered through this field, 6 pounds to the acre of switchgrass, and very, very few weeds, 10 to 15% of it as some other kind of weed. And that is one of my favorite fields. The only thing I would have changed different would be probably planting it at 4 to 5 pounds to the acre. And I would have been selective in areas where I sprayed the quinclorac and 2,4-D and simazine. I would have done that around the outsides of the field. And then I would have crisscrossed in the middle of it, leaving some areas to get weedy. I want weedy switchgrass in areas about the size of my garage, areas about the size of my living room. I want to specifically leave out areas and not spray them so they grow up in weeds. A lot of the lower areas would be good. And then the top areas where you got a little ridge or whatever, I want to go over and take out the competition with the quinclorac. So this is what we do, you guys. We explain it all. Am I covering all the questions, Bryce?
I know. So you kind of have 3 different methods that you kind of use when you planted all the switch in the front, the middle, and then the bottoms. Let's go. The second field, the back part is all like solid switch, and then you wrap the edges.
Yeah. So then what you're saying is that the first way to use switchgrass is a border.
Correct.
And what I mean by border is if you're not familiar with giant miscanthus grass, it acts as a border. If you're not familiar with green monster, which is an annual grass that we will want some type of border, you can plant switchgrass as a border to where people can't see into your timber, or you can't see into your timber, your deer can't see out. If you're doing that, you want a monoculture. It doesn't matter how thick you plant it, but you want to continue to keep spraying it and spend the extra money on the quincloracs and the 2,4-Ds and the simazines to keep everybody else out of there until it's established. And once it's established, it acts as an incredible barrier. It will stand very strong and by itself, and you have very little maintenance on it. But let me be clear, the deer don't bed in it. Okay, that's for your border guys that are wanting to put it around your fields so people can't see into it. So good for a driveway, good for an outer 3 or 4 acre field on the outside of your farm. When you enter it, that field's the one where you don't want them to bed, but you don't want anybody to see in, and you want the deer to see out. You want a safety cover. That's the one from Monoculture. And keep everybody else out there, and get a hold of us on an online consult, and I can walk you through what chemicals and what to buy and how to do it. That's at whitetail.com. I do an hour where I just talk like this and I explain everything in detail. But that's a monoculture where you want it tall, you want to burn it every 3 years, and you want to feed it with nitrogen and do whatever you can to make it a border. You can put blinds in that. And also, once you establish it, if you're using it there's a lot of guys that don't want to plant the miscanthus rhizomes, that they can use that to get to their blind and make a big peninsula and put their blind in it. I recommend putting your blind only 4 to 5 feet off the ground so you can use the switchgrass to get into there. And then if you want your switchgrass really tall in that area right by the blind, just start spreading nitrogen down to it. It'll get huge. And so that's the first way. The second way was I was trying to establish on a north to south 7 acre field a planting of switchgrass in the fact that I wanted it to be thermal cover and bedding. I wanted it to be thermal cover. And what's thermal cover? Thermal cover is it gets cold or it gets hot. It acts as shade or it acts as a windbreak. It's thermal cover for critters and animals and deer to bed in. If I can make that sliver of timber that has got snow laying in it and it's freezing cold and there's no treetops to lay and it's wide open, and I can give them an edge of a wall of a 7-foot grass wall and then an edge of a timber where they already have all this browse on the edge, they can bed up against that and get out of there. And that's thermal cover. But they seem to not want to bed into full 100% switchgrass stands that don't have foxtail and other weeds in it. They just don't want it. Places like Don Higgins's place and things that they've experimented with, where there's not a lot of big timber around, there's big ag fields and ditches, those are different. Those deer don't have a choice. As they get higher in numbers, those bucks prefer to go out into those big stands of switch, kind of like Nebraska or out in the big South Dakota, North Dakota. My farm, those deer are protected in these 35-acre islands of timber that they have 7-foot switchgrass all the way around them. Why would they bed in the grass? Why wouldn't they just stay in the timber surrounded by this security cover that the minute that I go in there or a coyote comes in there or some type of predation, somebody trespasses or whatever, that deer can jump into that grass and be there in seconds and stand in that grass and get away. It's more security cover than it is thermal cover for them bedding. That's why half that field to the right, I sprayed with all these chemicals, killing all the other competition. The deer don't want to bed in that side. The other side with the miscanthus lines that I put in, and the guy called yesterday to put in miscanthus X's. We were the first putting these bedding area, I was like, I can't afford trees, but I have extra miscanthus. And so I'm going to make these circles. I'm going to make these X's. This is 5+ years ago. And now it's common practice to say, hey, put these in there. Well, the deer still can't eat them. They're still not browsing on them. But to add bigger cover and kind of more variety, I don't need an award for being the first. I just thought it was a very good idea. So if I'm not the first in the world, I don't care. But I'm just saying, these were common practices in the original idea of how to use miscanthus and switch together. And I actually learned it from Adam Leatherman in Indiana. He had bought some miscanthus and put miscanthus and trees in his switch. And I guess I got the idea from him, but publicly talking about it, those were the first ideas I knew to put the X's, the actual X's and designs into them. But Adam's the first one I knew that was using them all together as a bedding cover. I got some of the most amazing pictures with oak trees in it, with it. It's out of this planet. And so the second half of that field, I just didn't treat with the post chemical quinclorac, which made it a little weedier. And the deer really liked the weedier, what I call dirty switch. And I would actually probably like pockets of it even dirtier than that. And I really noticed, I found 12 sheds on the edge of that field. So 7-acre switchgrass field. And on the edge of it were the overhanging limbs from the timber and all the multiple rows and the briars were growing up in the edge of that field. I found 12 sheds there all the way out to the driveway. So it wasn't that I had to go in to study where the deer wanted to be. When it came to late winter and they were staging up to go out to the beans and corn, they were playing around on the edge. They were bedded on that edge. So my method to my madness is I don't mind giving up a high income producing field if I can add security and double the rate of deer power in that timber that I have. If I have to give up this whole field to put it in beautiful switch, I know that even if they don't bed in that switch, they're going to use it for escape cover and security. It doubles, if not quadruples, the holding power of the nearest timber to it. So if it's in this field or this cove, let's say in Illinois, you have these ditches and you have these coves. If people would stop planting the food all the way back in these coves and they just used like this 3-acre cove or this 1.5 acre cove and they put it into switchgrass, they would double the holding power of the timber in between those. Because you got this ditch of timber and this ditch of timber and you got this flat of grass, and they could double, triple, quadruple the holding power and the preferable giant whitetails that want to use that area, because the does are going there to sneak around in the grass and the bucks are going there to sneak around after them. And I think you can keep bigger deer alive because they're searching for the does in your property rather than going to the neighbors. And if you can centralize that, that's where all the consulting comes in. And then the third way that you're talking about, I think that you're leading to with the switchgrass is, so you've got a border protective field of a monoculture, big, thick, tall stuff. Then you've got this, what you pick, whether it be full switchgrass or dirty switchgrass. And then you have kind of this other thing, which is what I call this feathered edge border stuff, which goes back to the story I was telling about the CP33 program, which was the 40-yard border. So I think 50 feet to 100 feet, so 50 feet to 100 feet, or as far out as you want, around the edges of all of your fields on your farm. And you're like, yeah, but that's like 6 acres. Yeah, who cares? If your goal is to grow whitetails, you are absolutely insane if you don't, the first thing before you ever have one of us consultants out on your farm, the first thing you look at is going, okay, let me pull the food out of these pockets, make those from top to, from point to point, that little pinch point that you love to watch deer walk out the clover, but none of the big ones ever make it out there. If you took that food away in that little pocket and you made that pocket in like Illinois dirt, this little cove, if you made that maybe switchgrass with a little bit of clover at the very mouth, the number of deer that's going to hold is incredible. And then if you want to picture around the outside edge of this entire big top field, most of our fields are either bottom fields or top fields. If it's a bottom field, put that sucker all in switch. Plant the spruces and the 2-2 spruces that I get from Ray, Genesis Wildlife Group. And I can talk about that later when I made the ultimate thermal cover where I planted Christmas trees and all these different Christmas trees and switchgrass and left it be dirty. And it is on year 3 or 4 now. And those trees are 3 or 4 foot tall and it's a dream come true. My whole bottoms are like that. And all my big deer go down there and then they come back up through all my switch out to my food and the flow. There's people now talking about the flow, but that has always been my thing. How do the deer flow through your farm? Where do you leave them alone? Where do they stay in? How do they get to there? Utilizing that flow is, how do you keep a deer that's laying in this wide open timber ditch with this multiflora rows and all this stuff? How do you keep him safe, feeling safe? If your field that your farmer's planting goes smack dab up to the edge of it, you have this open timber and then you have this open field and you're expecting, I think people are smarter than they act, because you're going to park your truck, walk across this field in the morning. The deer see you in the middle of the night. They look out and see you. They're like, oh, this guy's walking with a flashlight, walking across the field. He's going to get in that tree. Oh, that's nice. And they go the other way. But imagine if you were able to slip around the outsides and you had 20, 40, 50, 100 feet, 100 yards around the outside of every edge of timber out into the field, that you just said, hey, listen, farmer, I know you're not getting anything because of the tree roots anyways out into the field, and they all kind of roll over, and you always got trees falling in them and branches falling in them. The farmer is not going to care if you're taken away. In my opinion, the farmers I know, they go, I don't get, the last 6 rows don't count anyways. Why would you not take back authority over your farm if you're trying to grow big deer and put them into these soft edges with switchgrass, which means go along your edges, go put up your pipes or your flags or whatever it is, reclaim that for yourself. It's already being farmed, so you're not going to have a lot of weed seeds. So go spray, you can still do it. These farmers probably haven't put down their stuff. They don't mind this. Go reclaim a little bit. But if I could take a farm and the first thing I would do to this farm was go everything on the edge, I want 10 to 15 to 20 yards on every edge, all the way around, tall switchgrass. Nasty switchgrass, border switchgrass, and I'm going to go around the edge. And I'm going to try to make it a monoculture along the outside edge, because I want a wall and then I want dirty switchgrass on the inside. And it literally triples your farm on how much edge you now have. Well, technically it doubles it. Deer love edges of a field. There's one edge when you go from a field to a piece of timber. If you can add an edge of a timber now to the edge of the grass, and then the edge of the grass to the edge of the field, you just doubled the edges on your farm. If you can double the edges on your farm, you'll double the number of feet or miles or deer that have to walk further to search and give them bedding and more cover. Because like I said in the beginning of the conversation, which was, you have timber and you have field. That's it. Timber and field. you're missing something. So if you can add this border around the whole outside, you have just added another edge and you've just doubled your holding power of animals. And that has nothing to do with food, but it will bump up your food and browse because now you're not having chemicals eat the outside of your timber edge away. Because when these guys are spraying chemicals, farmers, their goal is to get a bean or a corn to grow as much as possible, and as many of them as possible. So when you're going around the outside, that's leaching out and you don't have your briars anymore, and you don't have where a tree fell over, but it's still growing. You don't have these soft edges that are growing this browse. If you got this big timber in there that doesn't have the young growth, now you need the edges to get the sunlight, to get the growth. And now you're giving them this grass that there's not any food in it, but they can drop their antlers in the grass. They can make scrapes. They can't see out in the field, which makes them have to go search more. The does can get away. The does can drop fawns. The bucks have to search more. It makes more of your farm have little points and areas to bed on the inside of that grass. And you can slip around your farm better. It makes you a better hunter. It makes you, I mean, if it made me cooler, why wouldn't I do it? If it made me slicker, why wouldn't I do it? If it made me a better hunter, why wouldn't I do it? I think I think switchgrass is like $150 for an acre. And if you did, I don't know, start with 20 feet, 30 feet around the whole edge of and just go from point to point, square up your farmer's fields. You're going to be amazed how much you can slip around your farm by taking away the visibility of the critters that are living in the timber. Because I don't think people go in the timber and sit there and look out and go, dude, these deer sit here in this timber and they watch me show up and they watch me walk to the stand. That's my whole thinking with Switch. But it all came from years of hunting a pheasant preserve for deer, even when I didn't hunt big deer. It came from years of watching giant deer walk through the middle of the switchgrass or through the middle of this tall native grass at 9:30, 10 in the morning and have 8 or 10 bucks chasing one doe. And I went, these things don't do this in the normal field. They don't do this in the timber, but they do this in grass. And some days they never sit down. And I really found that deer would go feed in fields and they'd come back to these grassy native areas. And then it seemed like they hung out all day long in them. And they never laid down when they were in the grasses. And when I get clients and they look at me like, man, you sure we need to turn all this into? I'm like, you're going to spend 30 grand this year. But if you are improving your habitat and your farm's resale value by 60, because once you make the initial investment, like we got guys right now that they're going to have to pay $25,000 for us to touch their farm and do an overhaul. But I know how much my farm went up. My farm was appraised at $700 and something thousand a couple of years ago. But if somebody wanted to buy my farm right now, and I'll bet there's guys that would love to buy it, but the whole thing is your corn and beans are already established where they're at. The miscanthus is already perfect with 40,000 miscanthus planted on the farm. Everything's particular. The switchgrass is in. The little trees are planted. And I have just been investing my time, blood, sweat, tears, and knowledge into building this 100-acre piece of perfection with a pond, even putting in the fish into that and feeding the fish and figuring out how to turn the home into a very simple Airbnb that people can rent for $300 and sleep 10 people and catch fish and have a campfire. But now that hasn't, you can sell that for the EBITDA or EBITDA of what your profit is on that. And so if somebody needs me to get I can show them where the value of putting 15 to 20 in will exchange not only in deer age class and inches of antlers and dreams. I will show them where they'll get it out of it because there's not another farm like it. So to come in and pay tell me what to do, $20,000, $30,000, here's this, and you have an investment of $25,000, $30,000 in a giant overhaul. It is not if you're going to have giant deer. It doesn't matter as if you follow these plans. You have everything set up right now. This year I killed a booner off my farm, and I had 5 other deer that were 2-inch ape winner. I mean, And I didn't think that was possible because my neighbors, I had to kind of get on my neighbors. And, Mark called me out publicly. He's like, "You're talking about me." And, Aspen and his dad, Nick, and whatever, they were, she killed a really big deer, but that was a 5-year-old. I wasn't talking about her. But like my neighbors got bent out of shape. But I think the conversation had to be like, I'm your neighbor. I'm your neighbor. I'm spending 20 grand to grow these deer every year, whether you kill them or not. Trust me, if there was ever a time in your life, if there was ever anything in your life, listen, guys, don't shoot the 4-year-olds. If you ever want to shoot something that's just like, I hadn't killed a deer off the farm in 7 years. If you ever wanted to see a super mega monster 180, 200-inch deer, this is the farm to be a neighbor to it. And don't shoot anything. Let's just watch what happens the next 3 or 4 years. Not everybody has that opportunity. So when you have those conversations, whether it be just a post on social media or whatever, it was 1, venting, number 2, complaining, number 3, going, I just wish that they would realize, just realize, just wait, just be patient. You have the neighbor that's doing it. And then, and I think now they see it. There's no way that they don't see it. Yeah, I killed one off of it, but I watched that deer for 5 years. He didn't leave me very often. He was one of those little babies that grew up to be 5.5. And would I have been able to hold that deer before? I don't think I can hold him now. It's not about me holding him. It's about if the hot chick goes across the fence, he's going with the hot chick. But you try to keep the hot chick in the grass. I mean, if I had to make a shirt right now, it would be keep the hot chick in the grass. Game Changers, Landlife, Chris Brackett. Love to say something funny right now. Keep the chicks in the grass, man. That's all I can say. If the girls stay in the grass, the big bucks will stay there, and they'll be on the outside. But I have like 3 more fields of that switchgrass like that, and they all have their own way that I planted them. I would say don't frost seed. If I had told somebody right now that was listening and was like, I bought some of your switchgrass. I'm ready to go. I frost seeded it. I would say, okay, if you frost seeded it, then you need to go out there and spray as much dang quinclorac on that dirt right now as you possibly can. Because that's the only way you're going to keep away the competition. Like, I don't know if that's legal, but I'm just saying, if they did that, I would be going to put a pre-emerge down like you've never seen, because as soon as everything else gets up. Now, if you did frost seed, I need you to chill out till, here's how I would say this. Okay. I want you to picture this little seed that's in this bag. This little seed you put down in the ground. It's stratified and it's laying there. It might try to grow with the 70-degree weather that just came out, but it's sitting on top of the soil. So it may germinate and then it may rot, or it may not grow. And if it does grow, here's what you can do. Yeah, picture how slow this thing grows. I've just told you how slow they grow. End of May, June, slow growing. In June, the guy will turn on a little bit. In July, he'll turn on a little bit. And in July, he'll start growing. So up until July, you need to mow that field. And every time the weeds get in there, you need to mow it. You need to keep these weed seeds and these grass seeds from creating any other seeds of competition. So if you frost seed it, and if it's sitting there and you put your pre-emerge on and you can't spray anything because you don't know if it did its thing or not or whatever, here's what I got to tell you. I don't care what you mow it with. Just keep mowing that sucker until about July. And then in July, let it run wild a little bit. And then in July, when it runs wild a little bit, go ahead and order you some Conclorac, order you a little bit of and then put you some Simazine in there and go spray that field and walk away from that sucker. I'll bet you it'll still work. But remember, anytime you frost seed, it's such a guess because you have to put it on twice as heavy, because I think a lot of those little seeds get eaten by birds. A lot of them germinate too soon and then they die. But the best is just to do the old fashioned kill where you want to put it, kill where you want to put it, disc it up, till it, let it grow up again with the weed seeds that are in the dirt, kill it again, and then put your Simazine down and spread your seed, cold pack it in the ground, and your pre-emerge is on there, and it's going to come because it's not going to have any other competition. So there is no easy way to do it. The easy way to do it is to do the work. Rent the tractor, have the sprayer, spray it, hit it with a tiller or a disc, let it grow again, kill it again, hit it with the disc again, just a little bit. We're talking scratching the surface. Then throw your seed down or drill it in. Put your simazine down as your pre-emerge for the other competition and walk away. It'll be beautiful. And you can go in year 2 and decide where you want to take out the competition to make half the field or pockets weedy, to let it be dirty switch. And then you have your outsides that you can spray your quinclorac or 2,4-D and your simazine on. A lot of it's strategy. A lot of it is hire us. Let me come out and tell you exactly where to put it. Let me put the flags on the ground. Let me draw the maps. And you're going to be so much further ahead because there's probably something, unless you're doing this full time, unless you like failure or whatever. The deal is that this is what we do every day, whether we're talking about it or doing it. This is what we're doing. Drawing maps in the field, experimenting, planting the miscanthus, finding new products, talking about stuff. How long we been on here?
Oh, we're sitting at an hour and a half right now.
Well, we're an hour and a half. I'll probably wrap that sucker up. So if you guys want to check us out, Instagram, Facebook, Chris Brackett's Landlife, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Watch all of our stuff at YouTube. We're going to keep going with YouTube. Big shout out, Herman Brothers Realty, Herman Brothers Fishery. They made this happen, the original investment to be able to buy some of this equipment. You will continue to see us as we get funding. We're going to keep buying more equipment so we can edit up all the old hunts. We got some new bear hunts on there that if you've never seen them, check them out on YouTube. Killed 2 giant bears in one afternoon with 2 tags in Alberta. One's with a recurve. One of them is an 8'3" bear, 2 of the biggest bears. You can find that at Chris Brackett's YouTube page. And I found something really unbelievable. I've been wanting to talk about it all week. This is the lowdown. So lowdown, all right, hunter's mate out of Wausau, Wisconsin, I think. Anyways, met Al and Aaron from Genesis Wildlife Group. There are very few times in the industry in 2024 in the outdoor world that something comes across my brain, face, desk, whatever you want to call it, that I go, yep, I definitely need one of them. So in a world right now where you are listening to me, I have in my hand a little pleather case with something that my nephews would have. What's this?
A tablet or
like a tab? Like that's how you describe it, as a tablet,
right?
So this tablet is lowdown. Check out lowdown. It's a lowdown high-speed trail camera viewer. All right. 3 times faster, over 60% larger. There are other stuff. I looked at Tractor Supply or wherever we were yesterday at some really cheesy, crappy ones. Like, it's like a really crappy video game that you're going to be playing. This right here is like a tablet. It has a place for your SD card. And the card, like let's say we're in the field. So I've got this in my truck. It's sitting in my console. If I'm in the Polaris, we're running the big farm, the 1,000 acres. Every farm I'm on, every console, every time I'm out there, there is always a time when you're like, dang, I should check this card. My batteries are dead. Let me grab this card. Even on your cell cams, you're replacing batteries, but you really wish that. Here's the scenario that happens all the time. The most common scenario. Ready? You have your batteries in your camera. It's sending cell pictures. Batteries, but a lot of times that sucker will still be taking pictures, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
But
it needs so much battery to send
so much
message.
Right? So not only do you have these bad boys stored there from the whole season, but you also have, who knows, another couple hundred pictures. And you roll up to it and you're like, oh man, I wish I had an extra card. Well, we win the day right here with this extra card scenario. So I will normally take a super card. Like this one's a super duper extreme pro. Okay. I will put this extreme pro in this slot right here that says save card. And this bad boy will sit in here. It will show up. You guys watching on YouTube, it'll show up just like this. I can now view pictures. Like so this will come up and we'll view pictures. I am right now looking at footage on this thing right here, just to show you guys how powerful this is. This is from my A7S2, my filming in the field camera that has footage on it right now. And I am filming my buddy Andrew right now on here. And it is showing me pictures This thing blows my mind because it's for reading trail cameras, but I am watching footage on here of some of my other cameras. This thing blows my mind. So I put in the saved card, right? And it's got a couple hundred megabytes or whatever they call them. And then I'm rolling around in the kill plot, and we pull the cameras from yesterday, and you throw that card in here, and you literally just go either click on a bunch of them that you like that are bucks, and you save them. They'll save them to this card. This is the memory. Or you can just dump it real quick and look at them later. You can have it in your pack, pull that card. Because I run about 50-50 cell cameras to regular cameras. I'll put the regular cameras out and I just leave them out there and go pick them up a couple times a year or at the end of the season if I want to get some really good quality stuff. And so you can keep one of these in your pack. This is not your kid's toy right here, okay? So you take that card, put in there, you put another one in there, and you're good to go. And it's the ultimate trail camera viewer. This is Lowdown. Check them out, Lowdown. And yeah, man, I just really like what they're doing. If you've heard me complain about reading my trail camera SD cards, I'll go pull them all. I'll go pull like 10 or 15 of them. And then I'll come back here to my super duper expensive $3,000 Mac. And it is just an absolute time going through them, pushing those buttons and having it freeze and stall out and restarting it. Well, this bad boy, the Lowdown, it's got a 9-inch screen, and it is pretty much my new best friend because, you know, it's made for what? Looking at trail camera SD cards, and you can watch videos on them, and you can keep them all there, and it's just fun. And you can take that SD card, and, you know, it doesn't have Bluetooth capabilities or anything yet, but you can take them and have them and use that mini card and put it on your computer, or you can put them your, you know, whatever that is. But I've just never seen something that you can put in an SD card and save everything to one spot and then go through them later. For me, it's all about time and efficiency, that I can just throw them in there, dump them, use that card again. I don't have to carry, makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to carry 50 cards with me because you never know what's got one on it or not. And you gotta, there's so much going on with SD cards now. Like, you have to make sure that you're using like class 10s and the speed. And I've learned so much from Al at Lowdown that we'll probably talk more about that as we go through the season, start setting up cameras. But right now it's about pulling cameras down because we're getting ready to restart this spring, and we're looking through all of these. And then if you guys want to know about some of the other mixes, let me grab these here. This is the one you're going to want to get on too. So you've got your Fort Knox, you've got your white gold Fort Knox switchgrass that you can order online at White Gold. Deer feed, you can start getting really excited about this bad boy right here. This is your October Magic. It is in stock, and we are getting ready to plant this bad boy in May. They can't get here fast enough. I never wish my days away or hours away, but I really, truly love planting season as long as it's not muddy, but I'm ready to get this bad boy in the dirt. I think it's going to be a droughty year. We've had this conversation with all of our farmer buddies. Super droughty year. We're kind of already in a drought. This is going to be your peas and your sorghum and your soybeans and your radishes. You're going to plant them all together, and you're going to have the October Magic, which is, for me, they love radishes early, but more than that, you're going to have this late radish stuff for late in the season, and you're going to have the sorghum and the Milo for really early in October when these bucks are craving it. So go check out October Magic. We got another one back here I'll tell you more about for fall plantings, but this guy and your switchgrass are the ones you're going to want to get. And then don't forget to go get your Clover Rush and your Gold Strike. Those are my favorite clovers. That's a White Gold. They make this possible, so go give them some love. Man, Bryce, thanks for being here, and hopefully we hit on everything on the list. I think we covered a lot on switchgrass. I don't know, maybe miscanthus, and talk about what we've got ready for planting and how to buy farms in the future. If you're interested in a consult, we can always send you what the contract looks like, and we can discuss it with you. if you want an online stuff, most Fridays, but we can make it any days. I try to do Wednesday and Fridays for online stuff, which is screen share, where you get to ask whatever questions you want about planting or strategy or stories or whatever. But you can go to whitetaillandlife.com on that. And yeah, thanks for watching and listening. Anything else?
I think you pretty much nailed it.
Okay. Peace out, everybody.